Hey everybody, welcome to the Read Aloud of Graham the Gargoyle, Graham's Grief. This is the first book in a 3-book series, but it is a self-contained story about how Graham learns to fly, or maybe he doesn't. That's what you're going to find out. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's the prologue. Now the setting is the magical realm of Cascade. When mortal belief in magic began to die out, the magical and mythological creatures of Earth found their life forces fading. Rather than face apathy and extinction, they banded together and migrated to another dimension where their combined powers could sustain them, a magical haven called Cascade. There they thrived, and a multi-mystical society was born. Chapter 1. Kara Squirma. Graham Grudel tugged at the mucka root with both hands, his coarse skin giving him added grip. His brow, rimmed with horns, furrowed as he wrestled with the stubborn plant. Despite a downpour last night, the soil was still hard. If he wanted mucka root stew tonight, he'd need all his strength in his lean physique. He bit his bottom lip as he strained. His tiny wings fluttered, adding little to his exertion. His friend, Ott Gleebelhut, a short, stout troll, as if there were any other type, worked 2 rows down and almost had his basket filled. The troll yanked another root out of the ground, sending his spiky sprout of white hair atop his head, springing back rather comically. 2 more to go, the troll chimed in. His bright yellow skin was speckled with mud. Easy for you. That part of the garden looks much looser. I got the drier patch, Graham said. He wrapped his fingers tighter and pulled. The root slipped free too easily, and he knocked the back of one hand against his small chin tusks. The left tusk broke the skin. Graham stashed the root in his basket and sucked on his injury. Ott laughed. That's one way to keep your chin up. His friend loved spouting off colorful sayings, a trait he inherited from his dad. Graham had not made many trips to the nearby village, but enough to know that the troll father and son were close, much closer than he and his own father. He crawled forward, pleased to find the ground much wetter. His clawed toes sunk into the moist soil. He found the suction created by the mud comforting. He liked staying close to the ground. It made him feel safe. Being mired in such fertile soil helped him forget what was coming up on Friday. In 4 days, he would have to take his first flight. As a level 5 student, it was a rite of passage required by all gargoyles halfway through the year in order to graduate. He was not ready to take it to the air. He had done little preparation beyond the basic wing exercises. Why should he? He already knew his puny wings would let him down. While others his age used the launch platforms at school and around the village to practice their takeoffs and landings, he had avoided all of them except one. Not that he had used that platform as it was designed. It had become more of a place of solitude, somewhere he could get away from the pressure of being the son of one of the more outspoken council members. He pictured himself tumbling out of the sky rather than soaring deep into the clouds. He'd splash into the Isis River for sure. Another first flight failure. What did he need with taking to the air? He was doing fine here on terra firma. Just looking up at the sky made his stomach feel light and queasy. He reached down to pluck another mucka root out of the row. The lumpy pink vegetable was one of the main crops of the neighboring clan of trolls. The other gargoyles avoided the trolls, claiming they were dirty and stupid. They detested how Ott's people clung to the ground and embraced the earth with such passion. Graham didn't believe any of it, which was why he was spending this evening helping his friend. While the rest of his classmates worked away on their homework or practiced yet another flight, he was here harvesting roots for Ott's family and his own. Graham eased out 4 more roots and placed them in his basket, dripping mud on his legs. Only need 2 more and my basket's full. How are you doing? He stretched, flapping his tiny wings ever so slightly. The troll paused in his labors and wiped at his broad torso, cleaning off a small portion of earth and splatter. Yes, but I'm half as muddy as you are. Perhaps you should consider more finesse in your uprooting. Looks like a dip in the waterfall might be in order for at least one of us. He snickered. He knew Ott loved visiting the waterfall just a forest or 2 away, but not because the troll was a meticulous bather. Trolls as a whole liked being close to Mother Earth. They enjoyed a little dirt on their skin. If they went to the waterfall, Ott, at the most, would simply dip his feet in and not much else. The dirtier he arrived home, the prouder his parents would be. Graham wished his own parents felt that way. He wiped a large clump of mud, its dark coloration a sharp contrast to his own bright orange complexion. Ott stood and slapped his palms together, spraying his gray vest with mud. Supposed to rain again tomorrow. Want to go mudsliding? He sighed. Maybe. Come on, since when do you not jump at the chance to get good and dirty? Graham scooped up an extra moist lump of mud and tossed it at Ott. The troll, moving surprisingly fast for someone so stubby and plump, dodged the mud pie. My goodness, your aim is terrible today. That's the fourth time you've missed me. Graham rolled his eyes and worked on the last root before him. The plant's purple leaves stood upright and were very large, a sure sign that he was about to unearth a succulent root. We can do one more basket, but then I have to go. Grandfather wants to tell me something important tonight. His friend nodded, his smile withering into a more serious expression. Is it about his crossing over? Graham kicked his basket over as he stood. He trudged over to his friend, knowing the tips of his tiny horns along his brow were probably tinged red from his anger. Who told you that? Who? Ott didn't back away. He kept on his knees, but maintained his stable pose. Your sister, Flann, was at the waterfall the other day, and she started blathering on about all sorts of things. The weather, Mary cones, sag bottom root, lava beetles, how your father was growing frustrated with the council. I tuned her out, honest I did. Except, Aunt's eyes darted from side to side. Except, well, she started to cry. I felt sorry for her. Then she let it all out. She told me about how gargoyles age, about the ritual of crossing over. She's just a blabbermouth. Flem was a level 3 student. She wasn't supposed to know any of that, but his parents had filled them both in since they were about to experience it with their grandfather. It must have been too much for his sister. She had blurted it all out to Ott. That was better than telling her classmates before they learned about it officially in level 4. Don't listen to her. He threw up his hands and stomped back to his basket. He picked it up and flung the carefully collected mucker roots onto the ground. Graham was about to hurl the basket into a nearby patch of bushes when his friend spoke softly, almost as if his voice would shatter the fragile air around them. Is it true? He sat down on a nearby rock and drew his knees close to his chest. His voice was shaky. It's true. As we age, our bodies calcify, slowly turning to stone. Grandfather is close. He can still move about, but is now bedridden. He's saving his strength for the crossing. He must be flexible enough to climb a mortal church. So he really does have to return to Earth? Ott's face wrinkled in fear. Yes, it's tradition. Gargoyles are very particular about following all the rules laid out by previous generations. Once atop a church steeple or roof ledge, we allow our bodies to harden completely and become guardian statues. Our presence on a church is supposed to scare away evil spirits. Graham picked at a patch of dried mud on his forearm. Why didn't you tell me before? Graham sighed. My sister and I just found out last week. I didn't want to worry you. Why would that worry me? Both of Ott's long tapered ears bent downward. You're not turning to stone any time soon, are you? The troll looked intently at him, perhaps afraid that if he looked away, Graham would indeed turn to stone. No, that can't happen. I'm too young. I have a lot of life ahead of me. Graham's voice tapered off as he spouted a quote often offered to him by his grandfather. He paused and looked up at his friend. Graham trailed off. He's the only one who... What? At that moment, a large mud pie hit Ott square in the back of his head. Graham and his friend spun around to see their worst nightmare approaching. Blord, the village bully, and his gargoyle band of thugs stepped into the garden, situating themselves on the driest patch of earth. Reginald and Skinnerd were always at Blord's side. Reginald was tall and gangly, while Skinnerd barely surpassed Graham in height. What the small gargoyle lacked in stature, he more than made up for in his weight and mouthiness. Skinnerd said, Looks like we interrupted a little moment, huh? Blord ignored his lackey's comment. He crossed his sizable arms and glared at Graham. His fellow gargoyles imitated his menacing pose less successfully. I figured I'd find you rolling around in the filth with your little troll friend, Graham. The bully beat his immense wings with vigor. Blord was Graham's nemesis. The gargoyle stood nearly 3 heads taller than him. While both were in the same class, Blord outclassed Graham in every way physically. The squat horns that framed the gargoyle's jaw on either side came to sharp points, something Blord worked hard to maintain. While he had never cut any of his classmates with them, Graham always feared he would be on the receiving end of them one day. Blord, just go away. I don't want this right now. The bully feigned surprise. Want what? Surely you'd rather hang out with me instead of some oafish troll runt. Blord pointed to the ground and nodded at his companions. They instinctively knew what he wanted from them. Or they had already discussed how this encounter would unfold, Graham thought. The two gargoyles edged over to a moist patch, leaned down, and scooped up handfuls of mud. They patted them into projectiles. Graham noticed Blord did not dirty his own hands. Graham said, "Odd as a friend, more than you'll ever be." Blord's eyes narrowed. "You should keep to your kind, Graham." "He's not done anything to you." Blord smirked. "He enrolled at our school, thanks to your father's influence. Now everyone has to put up with a filthy troll roaming the halls. You let one in, more will come." Graham knew many gargoyles resented Ott's presence at school. The troll had only been at the gargoyle school for a month now, about the only request Graham had made of his father that had ever been delivered on. While most tolerated Ott, a few wanted him gone. So far, Graham had shielded the troll from most of the animosity. "He's not a threat. We can learn about his people through him. There's more to Cascade than just our village." Blord flared his nostrils. "Ready?" Reginald and Skinner hoisted their mud pies over their heads, angling themselves so they could launch their projectiles at Ott only. "Don't do this. He's never done anything to you." Graham stepped in front of the troll and crossed his own arms. The effect was far less impressive than Blord's guarded stance. He now blocked them from pelting his friend with more mud. It was one thing when he threw a handful of mud at Ott. There was no malice behind it. "Go home." Blord glared. "Aim." Reginald extended his free hand, offering an upright thumb to help him properly sight his target. Skinner did the same, but closed one eye to make even more of a show of his preparation. "You're going to regret this," Graham said, attempting to sound strong and confident, not squeaky. He didn't think he had succeeded. His voice still sounded nervous and twittery. "Fire!" Blord roared. The bully beat his wings in joy as his gang bombarded Graham and his troll friend with volley after volley of muddy missiles. "Let the mud fly! Ha ha!" So that's the end of chapter 1. And the next time you come on here, we'll have chapter 2 ready for you. But as you can see, we've got a bully situation already going. We've got the trolls being treated as second-class citizens and the gargoyles wanting to stick to themselves, except for Graham, who wants to be friends with Ott. And I hope you enjoyed that first chapter, and we'll continue with chapter 2, Mudslinging Mayhem, in the next installment.